In this fortnight's episode, why organ donations should be opened to the free market. What's in the news with stories on more nipple news, more Apple news, and more wasted tax money, and other stories. And an ANCAP apps on a very personal app.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week. Coming to you from the state where the snowmobile was invented, this is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Revolution needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at the Lava Flow Pod. This is episode 32, the A Kidney for Your Thoughts edition. And it's Tuesday, March 15th, 2016, when we've already had more than 203 people killed by police this year. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. While watching the latest season of House of Cards last week, there was an instance where organ transplant was brought into the plot. I'm not going to give you any spoilers or details, but a character in the show needed a transplant soon or that person was going to die. It brought our current system of first come, first served donor program of organ transplantation back into my mind, and I thought this would make an excellent topic for this segment. Currently, when someone dies as an organ donor, their medical records are added to the donor list where it matches donor organs with recipients based on certain characteristics. These include blood type, tissue type, height and weight, and other things. The length of time the patient has been waiting, the severity of the patient's illness, and the distance between the donors and the recipient's hospitals also figure into what is the best match for a specific organ. A list of patients by organ type who match the donor is then generated. Each organ is offered to the first patient on the computer match list. The transplant surgeon may determine that the organ is medically suitable for that patient or may refuse the organ for a number of reasons, such as the patient is too sick to be transplanted, or the patient can't be reached in time. Most organs, 75% or so, go to local patients. The others are shared with patients in other regions of the country. As of January 2016, there were about 122,000 people waiting on organs in this country. The average wait time for an organ transplant varies by organ, age, blood type, and other factors. So, for instance, waiting times can reach 7 to 10 years for candidates waiting for deceased kidney organ donors. In the U.S. alone, another name is added to the national transplant list every 12 minutes. On average, 21 people die every single day from the lack of available organs for transplant. There is also an opportunity for living donor operations, meaning that if you find a willing person who will give you one of their organs while they're alive and you match with them, you can receive their organ. These organs can't be purchased in any way in the U.S. since it is a felony to buy an organ. As a matter of fact, the interview process for living donors is very stringent, and they ask a lot of questions to see if there is any money or services changing hands for that organ. The only thing that can be paid for by the recipient is cost of the surgery and any medical bills associated with that. Everything else is off the table. In the U.S., this is all managed very strictly by the Organ Procurement and Transplantation Network, or OPTN, which was created by the Organ Transplant Act of 1984. As you can imagine, this causes a massive shortage of suitable organs for transplantation. This, of course, causes many people who are financially able to turn to the black market or medical tourism. Medical tourism refers to the travel of people to another country for the purpose of attaining medical treatment in that country. Traditionally, people would travel from less developed countries to major medical centers in highly developed countries for medical treatment that was unavailable in their communities. However, the most recent trend is for people to travel from developed countries to third world countries for medical treatments because of cost consideration, though the traditional pattern still does continue as well. Another reason for travel for medical treatment is that some treatments may not be legal in the home country, such as some fertility procedures, or, as we're talking about here, organ transplants. According to Wikipedia, in the illegal black market, the donors may not get sufficient after-operation care, the price of a kidney could be above $160,000, middlemen take most of the money, the operation is much more dangerous to both the donor and the recipient, and the receiver often gets diseases such as hepatitis or HIV. In legal markets of Iran, the price of a kidney is only $1,200 to $4,000, and there is no waiting list at all for kidneys in Iran. Now, this is a shocking difference between $160,000 to $1,200. Why is the price range so different? For the same reason that drugs are generally much cheaper when they're made legal, or any other illegal product. The reason is simple. You're not having to pay what I like to call the black market tax, which is the increase in cost to cover risk associated with being caught performing an illegal activity. So making compensating donors illegal lowers the amount of organs available, raises cost to ridiculous amounts of money, leaves more people dying before receiving their needed organ, and puts people at risk of jail or worse to run a black market. Sounds like a great plan, right? But surely there must be a better way. Of course there is, and many countries are already doing it, such as Iran, Australia, Singapore, and many others. Introducing monetary incentives in the market for organ donors will, and has been shown in many countries, increase the supply of organs for transplant. This would in turn eliminate the very large queues in organ markets and would lower the suffering and deaths of many people who are waiting for organs. There's an excellent 51-page article about this called Introducing Incentives in the Market for Live and Cadaveric Organ Donations by Gary Becker and Julio Elias. Their economic modeling was able to estimate the price tag for human kidneys at $15,000 and human livers at $32,000. So for the price of a new car, you too can be the proud owner of a new organ and not die a horrible, painful death. What an idea. Now, of course, you would also have to pay to put the organ inside you, which is about $160,000 for a kidney and $335,000 for the liver. But you can see that the actual cost of the organ would only be a small fraction to these amounts, at less than 10%. There is clearly a persistent gap between supply and demand in the case of organ donations. And anytime there's a gap like this, there has to be obstacles that keep the market from equalizing. The main obstacle in this case is that we allow no monetary incentives to acquire organs from either living donors or individuals. This is basic economics. This needs to be fixed. There is risk involved in live transplants that keep most people from doing it. However, market incentives make taking that risk much more attractive to living people. And I know for one that I would feel much better knowing that my family received some monetary gift for my organs after I died. It would make me and millions of others much more willing to become organ donors if this were the case. But the idea of paying for organs is not without controversy, of course. As Becker and Elias say in their article, quote, proposals to pay for organs, even from cadavers, have been sharply criticized on several grounds. One of the most common is that payment is, quote, immoral because it involves the commodification of body parts. Individuals who make this argument deny that people have the right to control the use of their own bodies. If women can get paid to host the eggs of other women and bear their children, as they can in the United States, why cannot men and women get paid for selling their organs to save the lives of others? Surely the moral considerations involved in allowing pay for organs that save lives are no weaker, and for many persons would be stronger, than those involved in allowing pay for the use of wombs to create lives. Now, of course, individuals should be able to choose what they do with their own bodies, and we've discussed that on this show several times in the past. Another reason many people are against the sale of organs is because mostly poor people would be the ones to sell their organs. And of course they would. But should we deprive poor individuals from revenue that could be highly useful to them? And deprive the sick and dying the opportunity to save their lives? Of course not. Going back to Becker and Elias, quote, this argument was also made against the voluntary army, that it would become an army of the poor. However, it didn't quite work out that way. The very poorest often cannot qualify for the armed forces because they have insufficient education, low test scores, many use drugs, and so forth. Similarly, the organs of poor individuals who use drugs or have AIDS, hepatitis, or other serious illnesses would be rejected as posing too large a risk to the recipients. So probably the healthy poor and middle class would actually provide most of the organs for live transplants under a market incentive system. Of course, a quota could be placed on the number of organs from poor individuals, but is that desirable? And of course, it's not desirable at all. Quotas are still force, and no one should be able to tell me that I can't sell every organ in my body if I so chose. But won't selling of organs cut down on the supply of organs for altruistic reasons? Oh, you mean like the very large gap we have now because we rely solely on altruistic donations? Although paying for organs does not prevent people from supplying organs out of altruistic motives, usually to help relatives or friends, altruism clearly has been an insufficient motive under the present system. Otherwise, the demand for organs would not be so much larger than the supply. But, you might ask, won't only the wealthiest among us be able to afford organs? Wait, you mean like today when only the wealthy can afford the black market prices, right? Since the cost of these organs would be much lower than they are today on the black market, this type of purchase would be well within the reach of most people. And insurance would cover large parts of the organ once it's legal. Not to mention that charities could also step in to help as well once it's legal. Prices go down as supply rises. Everyone understands this. Not to mention the benefit of having much more information of where your organ is coming from when you're not buying on the black market. This will reduce the risk dramatically since the organs would be screened for disease, much more closely matched to recipients, and would remove the need to use inferior operating conditions and surgeons. One more time back to Becker and Elias, quote, "But above all, the most effective answer to the critics of paying for organs is that the present system imposes an intolerable burden on many very ill individuals who cannot afford to wait years until suitable organs become available. Increasing supply through payment would largely eliminate this wait and thus enormously improve the efficiency of the transplant market." And that, my friends, is the crux of this issue. What we're doing now is obviously not working. If 21 people a day are dying on the waiting list, nearly 1 per hour, nearly 8,000 people a year, something needs to change, and opening this up to the free market is the best solution. Until that happens in the U.S., though, I can tell you one thing. You can bet your ass that if I ever need a kidney, I will be on the next plane to Iran. Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In nipple news, the bill in New Hampshire that would have penalized women for exposing nipples in public failed to pass. Of course, this brought out the religious right with more inane comments. Quote, "It's a shame that some folks are more concerned with exposing their breasts in public places than they are concerned about how families and children may be impacted by being forced to experience this evolving societal behavior," Representative Brian Gallagher told a legislative committee. Quote, "This is about a movement to change the values of New Hampshire society," end quote. Talk about a false dichotomy. Not to mention just how ridiculous the statement really is. My children are often in the same space as nursing mothers, and I have never seen any impact to them. Hell, they've never even flinched or seemed to take notice of it at all. And I can't imagine they would notice any difference in men and women both being topless at the beach. Opponents to this bill, including Free Stater and New Hampshire State Representative Amanda Bolden, rightly charged that this ban would violate the Constitution by creating different standards for men and women. Carrie Stevens, a Hampton resident who enjoys topless sunbathing, also opposes the bill. Quote, "We are not lunatics. We are not radical. We're not looking to go to football games topless or libraries or school meetings," she told Associated Press. Quote, if there is a man in a public space who is obviously comfortable enough, then why should I not have the same right? And of course, she's absolutely correct. There is no aesthetic difference between a male nipple and a female nipple. And there is nothing more sexual about a breast than there is about lips. As I discussed in episode 28 of this show, The Breasts or the Burqa Edition, people find all sorts of body parts sexual. If you're going to use force to cover one of those body parts, then you must use force to cover them all if you're going to remain logically consistent. If this sort of mentality holds, I need to take stock in a company that makes burqas. You can hear my longer commentary on this issue at thelavaflow.com/28. In more Apple versus the government news, a New York judge has ruled that the Department of Justice cannot force Apple to extract data from a locked iPhone in a drug case. Magistrate Judge James Orenstein became the first federal judge to rule that the All Writs Act of 1789, which the FBI is attempting to use against Apple in several cases, does not justify, quote, imposing on Apple the obligation to assist the government's investigation against its will in a criminal drug case in New York. The implications of the government's position are so far-reaching, both in terms of what it would allow today and what it implies about congressional intent in 1789, as to produce impermissibly absurd results, Orenstein wrote. While the ruling is not binding in any other court, and the case deals with the iPhone 5 belonging to Yun Fang, who pleaded guilty to drug charges in October, the FBI is using the same defense that it is using to order Apple to, quote, build a back door into the iPhone of a San Bernardino shooting suspect. This is one of the 12 cases I mentioned last week that the FBI is trying to use to force Apple to build these back doors into the iPhone. Now that there are competing rulings on this issue, it is likely that we'll see this case go before the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, if recent SCOTUS rulings are any indication, they will likely rule against privacy in this case. For more information on this issue, listen to my latest episode, the An Apple a Day edition, at thelavaflow.com/31. Apple recently hired Frederick Davis, a lead developer for the Signal app, one of the most secure messaging apps available today and an app that I often use to communicate with family and friends. Signal is also the favorite app of whistleblower Edward Snowden, who says he uses Signal, quote, every day. If you don't use Signal yet, I highly recommend it. This hire shows that Apple is likely going to work on enhancing its security measures even further, which can only be good for consumers. The ultimate goal may be a device so secure that Apple has no way to assist the FBI in future cases, even if it wanted to. Wouldn't that be something great to see? In freedom of hate speech news, a Southern California high school decided that students who placed anti-gay stickers on their identification badges have the right to do so, just as others can wear insignia supporting gay rights, as long as they do not cause a disruption. The stickers show a rainbow, the symbol of the gay community, with a line crossing through it. Officials said the stickers have increasingly shown up over the past 2 weeks on some students' school ID badges at Shadows Hills High School, as well as on social media websites. Quote, we all have a right to freedom of speech, but students also have a right to be educated without fear. This has always been our policy, and we will continue to enforce it, according to the school's Wednesday statement. Many are calling these stickers hate speech and asking for these to be banned. But I don't recall the First Amendment saying anything about freedom of speech only applying to nice speech or speech that the majority wants to hear. It's exactly because hate speech is so much in the minority that makes these protections so important. If you don't want freedom of speech for your children, then send your kids to private school, or better yet, homeschool them. Keep them out of government indoctrination centers at all costs. In This Is Where Your Money Goes, the National Science Foundation gave Dr. Mark Carey $709,125 in federal grant money to determine that, wait for it, glacial studies are sexist. I shit you not. Dr. Carey used this money to conclude that glacial research is intertwined with gender relations, masculine culture, geopolitics, institutional power, and racism, and that this apparently led to glacier-related academic and governmental jobs being predominantly filled by men. Now, when I first read this article, I knew it had to be a satire piece until I got to this sentence in the article. Quote, "The study shocked many academics and real scientists, and several initially believed the study was a work of satire." Quote, "Who knew there was such a thing as feminist glaciology?" Robert Bryce, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute, told the Daily Caller News Foundation. "I can't satirize it. The scientists do that in their own abstract." And this isn't Dr. Carey's first go-around either. Carey attempted to link flooding from a glacial lake with an increase in sexually transmitted infections in women. The academic and his colleagues said the paper showed, quote, "how men's voices has dominated the research," and complained that, quote, "power and colonialism have shaped the science," when discussing the research on the university website. The scientists blame the era of Victorian imperialism for the lack of female glaciologists. As Marlo Lewis, an analyst at the Libertarian Competitive Enterprise Institute, said, quote, "Do we really need a study to tell us that glacier nerds are more likely to be men than women? Or that women in developing countries are more confined to their homes and child rearing when sudden glacier melt causes local flooding? Of course not." In Side Effects of Marijuana News, a study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found that the rate of deaths related to painkillers were 25% lower on average in states with legal medical marijuana laws when compared to states where cannabis is still illegal. According to the study's lead author and researcher, Marcus Backhuber, MD, quote, "States with medical cannabis laws have 24.8% lower mean annual opioid overdose mortality rate compared with states without medical cannabis laws. Examination of the association between medical cannabis laws and opioid analgesic overdose mortality in each year after implementation of the law showed that such laws were associated with a lower rate of overdose mortality that generally strengthened over time. In absolute terms, states with a medical marijuana law had about 1,700 fewer opioid painkiller overdose deaths in 2010 than would be expected based on trends before the laws were passed. The JAMA findings seem to support a 2015 Columbia University study that found smoking cannabis can help painkiller addicts by reducing the severity of withdrawals and health symptoms related to opioid abuse. A considerable amount of lives could be further saved throughout the U.S., as 20 states have reported marijuana legalization measures for the 2016 election. In the Hell I Don't news, the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia said in its recent decision on Doe versus George Mason University et al. That there is not a constitutional right to engage in consensual BDSM sex. And the case involved wasn't even about consensual sex, yet they thought that they had some reason to include consensual sex in their decision. Quote, "A legislative restriction on BDSM activity is justifiable by reference to the state's interest in the protection of vulnerable persons, i.e. sexual partners placed in situations with an elevated risk of physical harm," according to the ruling. It also said, in this respect, the conclusion that there is no deeply rooted history or tradition of BDSM sexual activity remains relevant and important to the analysis. Also relevant and important to the analysis is the absence of a history of impermissible animus on the basis for the restriction at issue here. Sexual activity that involves binding and gagging or the use of physical force such as spanking or choking poses certain inherent risks to personal safety not present in more traditional types of sexual activity. So, by the logic of this court, accessing the internet is not constitutionally protected because there is no historical use of the internet. And NASCAR is now unconstitutional because it poses certain risks to personal safety that are not present in more traditional types of driving a car. This is sheer lunacy and shows that no branch of government gives a rat's ass about protecting our rights. And people wonder why I gave up on democracy, or any form of government for that matter. In No Charity Like Forced Charity news, the city of Sacramento, California is trying to shut down a group of formerly homeless housemates who are trying to help the homeless by distributing donated goods to others. They said that they benefited from the kindness of strangers in their times of need, and now they want to pay the goodwill forward. The city says that their free stuff constituted a garage sale, and Sacramento code only allows one garage sale per year. The city issued a warning to the Good Samaritans, which will be followed up by a $1,000 fine if they fail to shut the donations down. Worsley insists that what they're doing isn't a sale at all, but a giveaway. All items, from used baby toys to canned goods to romance novels, are donated from members of the community. The housemates solicit them via a Pay It Forward Facebook group and give it all away for free. Cash donations are accepted from those who want to give, with the money going to provide Sunday sack lunches for the homeless. A neighbor called the whole business, quote, kind of tacky. Want to know what I find even more tacky? People who want to use force to shut down voluntary charitable giving. Of course, they have to shut this down, though. If people see that private, voluntary charity is much more effective, that will be one less reason for many people to feel that they need a government safety net. In some personal news, last month was yet another record month for this show. I ended up with 4,402 downloads in February, a new record by a long shot. That's a 10.5% increase over January, and February was 2 days shorter than January. Thank you so much for all of your reviews, your shares, your likes. Every bit of that helps, including your word of mouth, and it's much appreciated. I set my personal goal at 5,000 downloads per month by the end of this year. At this rate, I'm going to hit that goal much sooner than I planned. Please keep sharing and talking about this show. Every time that you do so, an angel gets its wings. Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
ANCAP apps.
ANCAP apps is usually where I bring you apps, whether they be phone or web apps, that will make your life as a libertarian better, more secure, or just plain more interesting. This week I bring you one that's a little bit closer to home. This podcast that you're listening to right now has its own phone app, now available on both Android and iPhone. You can find it in the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store by searching for The Lava Flow. Now, why would you want to download an app for this podcast? For several reasons. First, you can listen to the show directly from this new app. All of my episodes will load up on this app as soon as they release, so no need for a separate podcatcher. You can also get directly to my Facebook and Twitter from this app. There's also an About the Lava Flow page on the app that tells you all about me and the show. But my two favorite features are the Contact the Lava Flow button and the Push Notifications feature. You can now directly contact me from the app. Please use this feature often. I love hearing from you guys. Use this feature to tell me whatever's on your mind, or to tell me about a topic that you want to hear me cover on an upcoming show, or tell me what you think is good about the show or bad about the show. Hell, just use it to tell me hi. Another feature of this app is the push notifications. This allows me to send you a notification to your phone when I have a new episode out, so you're one of the very first ones to know. I can also use this feature to notify you of special content or update you on how close I am to bringing you more content thanks to my supporters. I can even send you hourly reminders that you can support this show. But no, I won't be doing that, but I could. In all seriousness, I won't be using this feature very often, so you know when you get a notification from this app that it is for something special. And if you want a custom app for your business, your podcast, or just for the hell of it, check out Granite Applications at graniteapplications.com. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my lady porcupine, Jessica, for her help with this show. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on this show, go to thelavaflow.com/32. I have a favor to ask all of you. If you have a Facebook account, please follow this show. You can follow me at thelavaflow.com/FB, which will take you directly to my Facebook page. Thank you so much. I have several new iTunes reviews this week. I asked and you guys delivered, and in spades. Thank you so much. Kyle, a friend and fellow Free Stater and a donor to this show, said, "One of my favorites. Roger consistently delivers a great product with recurring segments from a voluntarist perspective. Keep up the good work, my friend." And Gary, another donor to the show, said, "An apple a day keeps the government at bay. This was a great discussion and nice detail to the actual issue, both technical details and how the government is trying to set precedents for future backdoor access to crypto on personal devices. Keep up the great work. I really enjoy the show. Thanks for putting out such a great product for liberty." Kyle and Gary, thank you both so much for those awesome reviews and for your support. I cannot tell you how much it means. Houston Libertarian said, "Don't miss this podcast. I had the pleasure of meeting Roger and his lovely wife," and yes, she is lovely, thank you, Houston, "at the Liberty Forum in February. What wonderful people. Roger's podcast delivers the goods, and I love his logical approach. Subscribe to this one, enjoy, and become a patron to help him out with the show." Houston Libertarian and I met after I did my appearance on Free Talk Live, the Saturday night of Liberty Forum, and we had the opportunity to have a great conversation for several minutes. It was really good to meet you, Houston. Thanks for the great review. And Jay in Spokane said, "A principled take on the subjects of the day. A wonderful bi-weekly analysis of current events from a principled libertarian point of view. The only fault is that there's not enough of it." Thanks, Jay, for that review. All I need is just a little bit more support, and I'll be bringing you more content weekly. Meech, 1889, posted a joke along with his 5-star rating of the show. Quote, "How many libertarians does it take to change a light bulb? None. If the bulb needs changing, the free market would have done it." Now it's your turn to give me an iTunes review. iTunes steers people to this podcast based on the number of subscribers and the number of positive reviews, so every review that you give me helps this show. Go to thelavaflow.com/iTunes today to give me a rating and a review. And speaking of supporting the show, I have a bit of egg on my face. I said last episode that I had no new supporters, but I was wrong. For some reason, I didn't get an email from Patreon about a new donor a couple of weeks ago, and I failed to check my Patreon account myself. So apologies and kudos go out to Brian for becoming a new $10 per episode donor. Thank you, Brian. I have 3 other new donors as well. Alan is a new donor at the $5 per episode level using Patreon, and Dustin and David became new donors at the $2.50 per episode level. Thanks so much, guys. It is very much appreciated. This brings me to a total of $72 per episode. I asked for you guys to step up on this as well, and you have done it. Thank you so much. And if you, like Brian, Alan, David, and Dustin, want more of the Lava Flow and to keep this show ad-free, exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per-episode donation of as little as $1 an episode using Federal Reserve notes through Patreon or Bitcoin through Coinbase. There are monthly costs associated with doing this show, and I need additional equipment to continue making this show better for you every single episode. I'm sitting pretty at damn near 3/4 of the way towards bringing you more content every single week. Holy shit, I'm getting close. I am not sure if I'm ready to give you content every week, but I guess I'd better get ready, because you guys are going to make this happen very quickly at this rate. Help me reach my first goal by going to thelavaflow.com/support. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.